I'm thrilled today to be with author Megan Soja, historical fiction author, a debut book coming out. Megan, we were chatting a little bit about how this came about. So, the background of how she ended up writing the series. So we'll talk about that and just introduce yourself, Megan, and let's get started.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. It's great to be here. And I am Megan Soja. This is my Spark of the Revolution. It's my debut book, as you said. I live in Western New York, where it is very cold and snowy right now.
Wow.
But I have two little girls that are in elementary school, and they are loving the snow much more than I am, I think. So
Mhm.
making lots of snowmen and sledding this winter. But yeah, my husband and I have two daughters. I love being a mom. It was always one of my biggest dreams to be a mom, and being an author was another one of my big dreams. So I'm very thankful to be where I am and very excited and a little nervous, but it's a great adventure. Writing has been a great adventure. So I'm thankful for where God's brought me and excited to get this book out into the world.
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit before we got started recording that we see a lot of Civil War or post-Civil War, a lot of World War II books, way too much Amish fiction out there. Not that if you love Amish fiction, I apologize. It seems like it's been hanging there forever. So when Megan first was trying to pitch this book, she got a lot of big houses saying, "Oh, people don't want to read about the Revolutionary War period." So tell us how you got started with this, Megan.
Yeah, so I had actually gotten started with writing, oh, probably like 10 years ago, and I was writing a contemporary because I grew up going up to the Adirondack Mountains in New York, and I love it there. It's one of my favorite places. And so I had an idea for a story that was set there and had some faith themes that kind of echoed things that I'd experienced in my own life. And I had been doing some blogging kind of casually before, and this was my first foray into real writing. And I thought, as much as I love historical, I know it's going to take a ton of research. And I didn't feel at the time, I had a really young daughter. I was like, I'm not sure I'm cut out to start right with that. I'm going to see if I can write a book first. So I wrote my contemporary, loved it. It was a great feeling to write a full book. But I kept hearing advice um, to not write two books in a series, especially if you're looking to try to go traditionally published, to write the first book and then start a new book in a new series.
Oh,
Because if
really?
nobody wants that first book, they were not going to want that whole series. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to start a historical. They also say don't switch genres, but I ignored that advice. And I said, I'm going to try my historical now. And I have always loved the American Revolution era since I was a little girl. I had a Felicity American Girl doll and went to Colonial Williamsburg as a kid with my family. And I knew that was the era that I wanted to write, but I didn't know exactly what about it or where I wanted it to be set or anything like that. So my younger daughter was born with a congenital heart defect that was pretty complex. And so we had looked into, I won't go into all the complex medical details of it, but we had looked into some second opinions for her for surgical options. And Boston Children's Hospital is really well known for having a fantastic heart program, and they do some surgeries that really are hardly done anywhere else in the world. So we had taken her there, and they said they thought she was a candidate for some other options that would really give her a better long term outlook. So we started going to Boston for her surgeries, and it was several staged surgeries over several years. So we would go to Boston a couple times. We didn't really get to do much touristy stuff because we were mostly at the hospital, but we were in Boston, and I started to think about, okay, this is a city that's full of history, and here I am right here. So in August of 2021, she was going to have her biggest surgery. And the day before, we actually had one day free based on when we arrived to just do a little bit of touristy stuff. And because she was going to go into surgery, we didn't want to be around a lot of crowds indoors. So we said, we're just going to walk around outside and see some of the city. And we walked through Boston Common, and we walked through a couple of the old cemeteries and walked down to the harbor and saw Faneuil Hall. And, just all the history that was there. As you walk through the old cemetery and you see these names that you recognize, and monuments to Boston Massacre. So it was so fascinating. And so that following week, when I was in the hospital with her as she's recovering from her surgery, I was just starting to kind of get some ideas and research. And I was sitting in the cardiac ICU looking at ideas, and that was kind of it cemented it for me that Boston was where the story should be. And then I found amazing information about the Boston Tea Party. And I thought, I thought I knew about the Boston Tea Party, but I really didn't. These are great details that I didn't know, and they're so interesting, and hopefully would be interesting for other people to read through the
Right.
lens of my characters. So that's how the idea was born and took off from there.
Wow. I think people can learn so much more through historical fiction because it's a story and not
Yeah.
some dry uh, listing of dates and things that happened and all
Yes.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Boston a few times. I love Boston. It is such an amazing place to wander around and really
It
get
really
a
is.
sense of history. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
fun place. Um, so your first book is called Spark of Revolution, and it comes out, well, by the time this will be it will be have been out. I'm sorry, I'm blah, blah, will have been out for about a month by the time this posts, because we're going to post this
Great.
April 3rd. So
Yeah.
will be available for you to purchase, and all those links will be in there. But tell us
Yep.
a little bit about this story,
Yeah.
particular story.
Yeah. So Spark of the Revolution, as I said, is based on the Boston Tea Party set around that event, which inspired the title because the Tea Party itself is called the Spark of the Revolution sometimes. It was that really was a spark that started into much more organized and purposeful moves towards revolution eventually. But it follows my heroine. Her name is Patience, who she thinks her parents probably made a mistake in choosing that name for her.
I guess she's not patient.
She's not so patient. Yeah. So she actually arrives aboard one of the tea ships in Boston. She comes from England with her brother, Will, and they're traveling to be reunited with their father, who had been living there. He was a sailor for many years, so she hadn't really had him in her life for much of her growing up years. But her mother has recently passed away, and so they're coming to be reunited with him. And she has these kind of lofty expectations for what this reunion is going to be like. She's grieving the loss of her mother, so she's looking for this sense of belonging. And then she arrives in this tumultuous time when the tea
Mm.
ships have arrived, and also finds out that her father's life is not what she expected that it was going to be. And she's thrown into a completely new family that she was not expecting. So she's really got this journey of, where do I belong here? And, my father's beliefs and his feelings conflicting with what I expected things to be. And her father is also a staunch loyalist. He has a shop where he continues
Oh,
to sell tea. So that's a little piece that she's kind of wrestling with. Well, her brother is leaning towards the patriot ideas as he gets to learn about them more. And then my hero is Josiah, and he's a blacksmith, and he's a part of the Sons of Liberty.
oh,
So he's
wow.
definitely made his choice of where he stands. But he came to Boston years ago. He was orphaned. And so he's also got that longing to have a place where he belongs, a people that he belongs to. And he's kind of found some of that with the Sons of Liberty because it's camaraderie there, but he misses having a family of his own. So they're both kind of searching for similar things, coming at it from different ways. And as you could expect, with her father being a loyalist and Josiah being in the Sons of Liberty, there's some conflict there. And then Josiah takes part in the Boston Tea Party, and yeah, lots of things to overcome after
Wow.
that.
And
So
it's on Kindle Unlimited, I saw.
yep, it will be. Yep, it is on Kindle
I
Unlimited.
love
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, interesting. I had a thought and then it flitted away, but I was thinking about the loyalists and the, well, they call them the Tories and the
Yeah.
all those. When you were researching, by any chance, did you come across the book My Brother Sam is Dead?
I actually had read that when I was yeah,
Eighth
like a
grade,
teenager, I think.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
When I was an
Yeah.
eighth grade teacher, that was a required reading for the kids, and it was hard
Yes.
because every year I read it, you keep hoping the ending.
I know. It's
You
such a
get
heart wrencher.
It is. My brother
Yeah.
Sam is dead. It's kind of, you kind of know that her brother
Yeah.
Sam dies in the end, but you kind of
Right.
hope it'll change. So
Right.
it gives you a real glimpse of the interesting dynamics that were happening in that time period,
Yeah.
and how ironic a lot of that stuff happened. People that
Hmm.
were in that, I think, was taken from some real public cases in that story.
Probably.
So
Yeah.
if anyone's interested in just getting a little history, it's a quick read of
Yeah.
the Revolution before you read jump into that book, you might want to read that one.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's an eighth grade reading book, so it's
Yeah.
easy. But
Johnny Tremaine is another one that I read when I was
okay.
younger, and that's another Revolutionary War era set in Boston. I think Paul Revere makes a little appearance in that one, but again, not too long because it's technically for kids. But
It's interesting. I have a friend that I worked with for years, and she's no longer even writing. She was a phenomenal writer. I just broke my heart that she quit. But her novel was set in the American Revolution, and she got the
mm,
same feedback years ago that
yeah,
you getting from people saying, no, it's either no one's interested, or we have a book somewhat like that already, and we don't want
yeah,
to put another one out there.
yeah.
So when you went, how did you find Wild Heart Books then to publish?
Yeah, so I'm part of the American Christian Fiction Writers group, and I had been involved for a couple of years, probably a couple of years, with a critique group through the Northeast chapter, and we're all kind of spread out. Where none of us live near enough each other, so we just do Zoom meetings once a month. But one of my critique partners is Lori Dudley, who publishes with Wild Heart, and she writes some really neat Regency era books, and so we had been talking, I'd been filling them in on my journey. I'm looking at agents, I'm meeting people, I'm sending this out, and this is the feedback I'm getting. And she said, I think you might really like Wild Heart. It's a great community. It's because it's smaller, you feel like more personal. And she said, I don't think they would be struggling with the time period, and you should see what you think. And she was really happy there and had great things to say. So I sent my proposal in, and right away they were interested, and I had sent in as an idea of a 3-book series, and they were interested in all three, which was great because you start to imagine, even though you've only written one, you start to
Right.
imagine the other ones. So you want to have a chance for them to all be told. So I was very thankful that they were interested and were excited to get this time period out there.
Well, I think Misty Beller is an incredible publisher too. I think
Yes.
she's so intelligent and she's so on task with understanding the logarithms and all the things that go on.
Yeah.
It kind of blows my mind. I don't think I'll ever be able to figure that stuff out. I wish I had her
Yeah.
brain. She's really good with that.
I
So,
think she has a background originally in like marketing and stuff. She's
oh yeah.
really, really fantastic at it. So
She's good at it. You
yeah,
have you landed a good publisher. I'm happy
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
So
Thank you.
tell us, you have your other book is on pre-order. So when is that one
Yeah.
supposed to come out?
So Secrets of the Revolution is the second book. It comes out June 10th.
Wow, you've got them close
They're
together.
close together. Yep. So when I sent my proposal in, the first book was completely written. It had been done for a while. So because of that, and I had started on the second book already, we were able to kind of get them closer, release closer together, which is nice when you're starting a series because you get into it and you want to
Right.
you want
What
to keep
about the
following it
third book?
along.
You have a third book now.
I
Are you
do.
working on that or are you done
I'm
with that?
I'm writing the third book right now, and I actually recently added a fourth book to the series because as I was writing the second one, a character came along, and I said, this guy kind of feels like he needs his own story. And I asked my editor, and she said, yeah, let's ask Misty what she thinks, and we'll talk about it. And they agreed, so we added a fourth one on. So I'm writing the third one that will come out next January 2026. And then I'll be working on the fourth one once this is done.
Wow. Wow. So how much time do you spend writing every week, would you say?
Well, my girls are both in school, so during the week I try to do a pretty solid chunk. I'm one of those writers that likes to sit down and focus for a while. I know some people say, I just grab 15 minutes here.
I can't do
It
that.
takes me too long. Yeah, I just don't get into the right rhythm.
It
So
takes me
I try to
15
do,
minutes just to get into some kind of like I have to go
yes,
back and read everything I wrote before I can,
right,
and it takes
right.
me a good 15, half an hour maybe before I can even start writing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I love to do like a 2-hour chunk because then I feel like I really can do that. Like read through where I left off, get back in, really focus. So I tend to do a couple hours, and then depending on what else I have in my day, I'll come back to it later, or if I have to run errands, I'll set it aside. But I kind of map out a general how much I want to finish each week during the days that the girls are at school. And if I don't get it done, then I do some on the weekends, but I try to make the bulk of it during kind of like a normal day job to
Right.
make the bulk.
Do you have what you consider a word count for a week? What you like to get done in?
Um, I loosely have a word count of like 850 plus a day, which isn't that much because if I'm writing for that long amount of time, but I tend to be a pretty pretty precise. Like I spend a lot of time in the initial writing so that the edits don't take as long. It's just
Right, I do
I know
too.
some people love to just get it all on there and fix it in edits. It just doesn't work that way well for me. I much more prefer to have a cleaner draft. So it's slower on the front end, but I think it saves time in the
Yeah.
end. I
I
think probably all evens out.
I don't know. I'm the same way. Being an English teacher, I have to edit as I go, and I drive myself nuts sometimes. But
Yeah.
I, I did interview somebody who said they whipped out their whole book in a month,
Yes.
100,000 words in a month, and I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that was the first draft. Then there are 15 more drafts. So it's like,
Right.
okay, I
Yes.
would rather that would make me crazy because I would want to be done with it by then. So
Right. Right.
so
I have a
yeah,
friend who's like that. She just pours it out. She's like, I can't help it. It just comes out, and then she'll do like 8 rounds of edits. And
yeah, it
I,
pours it out. I'd love it if
that's
it
like,
poured out.
yeah, I know it's not like that for me, but that's what I love about the writing community too, though, is you get to hear how everybody has different
Hmm.
ways that they work and think and process, and but we all end up with a story in the end. So
You do. Do you find that that when you're writing your stories and you've already done all this research, so you've done a lot of research. Do you have to go
yeah,
back and do a lot more research, or can you play off the research you previously did so you don't have to do more on the back end of it?
yeah, it's definitely less research now than it was for writing the first one. I spent a really long time for the first one because it was not just the historical events, but the time as a whole. What's the clothing? What's the right word for this piece of clothing? What would they be eating? They're all set in and around Boston. So I had to learn all these locations. And Boston looks obviously completely different now than it did
Oh
before.
yeah.
So looking at old maps. And so the initial research was a lot longer just to feel like I felt really immersed in the time as a whole and understood it as opposed to just, okay, I need to know the Boston Tea Party too, but I also need to have this ground level understanding of everything. So it's been a lot quicker for book 2 and 3 because now it's just been more of the specific events that I want to center on. And I feel like I'm comfortable in the time period as a whole.
Well,
So
then
that's
you
been
have the
helpful.
language, the dialogue, because they
Yeah,
don't talk the same, but you have
yeah,
to make it so people can understand it.
right.
So
Yeah,
there's a
I think you kind of have to sprinkle some things in to give it the right feeling,
hmm.
but obviously it would be unreadable if we tried to write as people spoke then because it's just so different. So
It's
I'll
like
put in
be like reading the King James Bible.
yeah, yeah, right. So I'll put in, I kind of have a few specific terms and words, and you'll say you're 8 and 10 instead of 18. But so it gives it that feeling without being too hard to bog you down.
Do you take out contractions?
I do try to, or I'll do like tis instead of it's. But yeah, and I do for different characters too. So if somebody's maybe a parent and a little more formal, I'll make sure that they don't use them to
But I
try to give.
noticed in a lot of the older writing, they didn't use words like can't. They would do
No,
cannot and will
yeah, they
not,
would take. Yeah, yeah,
which actually increases your word count quite
it does.
a bit.
It's true. It is true.
It really increases the word count. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the covers are beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
we're going to have on video as well because we're putting this on YouTube. Do you happen to have one of your covers available?
It's my proof copy, so it has
That's okay.
got a little bar through it, but yeah,
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah,
Oop,
that's beautiful. Yeah, I
yeah, I
like that
really
a
love
lot.
it. It
Yeah.
turned out so well and really captures, because it's winter time.
Mm.
It captures the feel of it very well, and I was excited.
Yeah. So how is your daughter? I mean, just since you brought her up, I mean, I'm
Yeah, she's
curious.
she's doing wonderfully. So the surgeries that she had were complicated, but they worked out amazingly well, and so she has as close to a normal heart as she could possibly have. Um, she is a, and she's 7 years old. She's thriving. She's living her best life. Pretty much, I don't think if you saw her, you would never know
Right.
all that she had gone through when she was younger. But She does dance. She's in school. She's learning to play the piano. She's doing wonderfully. We are so thankful, and God really placed so many people and things in her path along the way to get her to where she is. So we call her, she's our little walking miracle. She's
That's
such a
great.
blessing.
But
So
what a difficult thing to have to go through as a parent.
yes, yes,
You make
it
it
was
sound so
hard.
easy. Oh, I was hanging out in the
Right.
cardiac ICU and I was writing thinking of these stories and I'm thinking, well, you probably had a little more angst than that going on.
Yeah, yeah, it was hard. And it was I think it makes the story even more special to me, right? Because I where it began was in such a difficult time.
Like cathartic to be able to write.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
it was. And it just kind of, I don't know, sometimes it helps to have something else to focus your mind on. So
Absolutely.
it was really helpful to be thinking about that and to be kind of thinking ahead still. We're here in this moment. We got to take care of what we need to take care of, but we're also hopeful for the future. So
Right. A lot. Yeah, but you had a lot. I mean, my daughter was in a car accident right as she hit 18 and was in
mm,
a coma and had to
oh
relearn
my
it.
goodness.
And I spent weeks sitting at her bedside, at the rehab center.
Yeah.
But I knew that, I mean, it wasn't another surgery she was looking toward. You had all these surgeries you had to continue.
Yeah.
It was a series. So, and
Yeah.
that's a long time. And it's a lot different when you have a little tiny child as opposed to
Yeah.
one that's practically grown.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So,
is. It's hard because they're so small. I mean, her first heart surgery, she was 2 weeks old. So, just
oh,
this tiny little baby. But looking back at it now, the good thing about it is she doesn't really remember any of it.
right.
She had five surgeries before she was 5 years old, but she really has no strong memories of any of them. So hard
That's
on us as parents,
right.
but I'm thankful that she's doing well and that she doesn't have to have big memories of those hard things. So
Oh, good. So you
yeah,
have, so we have a few more minutes here. I would really love to hear a little bit more about your second book, Secrets of
yeah,
Evolution. So you have Patience and Josiah in your first book, and you
yeah.
gave us a little idea of what that was going to look like as for conflict. What about your second book?
So book two follows Patience's older brother Will. Each of the books is made so that it can stand alone and you can pick it up wherever, you won't be lost. But if you read them in order, you get to kind of follow different members of a family. I've always loved that.
Yeah.
Family is such a big thing to me, so I love kind of seeing families in stories. So her older brother Will, he worked as a printer, and he works for in my story, he works for Edison Gill, which was a real printer in Boston at the time. They were quite the patriotic, kind of got on people's radar as being a little bit too rebellious. Um, but so I have him working there, and the whole series is called the Harbor of Spies series. So there's little bits of espionage throughout all of them, but the second book has a lot bigger espionage theme in it. So he's kind of made this offer that you could maybe help the Patriot cause on a new level, and he's considering whether he wants to do that or not. And then my heroine, her name is Hannah, and she is the daughter of an apothecary, and her father is um, older, and he's having some mental health failings. Kind of what we would maybe today call like a dementia or Alzheimer's. They wouldn't have had those words at the time, but he's starting to fail in his ability to keep the apothecary running. And she is really capable, but she's a woman, and she's not officially apprenticed or trained or anything. So she's trying to balance caring for her father, keeping things running, but also not letting anybody else really know how much she's doing behind the scenes. And it follows time period wise. It picks up in 1774, kind of the aftermath of the Tea Party. So when England then sends all these what we call the intolerable acts, we know them as that,
Mm-hmm.
closing Boston Harbor, taking away the Massachusetts Charter, and so the problems that come as a result of that. That story follows a longer time period. It starts there and it follows all the way into 1775 with the battles of Lexington and Concord. So it's kind of all that aftermath of the Tea Party culminating at those first battles, really. So and there's a lot of it was such an interesting part to research because we kind of, as we learn it in school, we're like the Boston Tea Party was, the big starting point, and then there was the Battle of
Right.
Lexington and Concord, and we forget there was a whole year in
Yeah.
between, and so there's a lot of political maneuvering that was going on, which, as I was researching, it's fascinating to learn, but not fascinating to read per se, in a fictional story.
Right.
So
Right.
I found that I wanted to weave bits and pieces in, but that's really more woven in through the spy aspect of who's gathering what information and passing it on and trying to, yeah,
It's
not
pretty
cause
fat.
too much trouble. But
I think that history is fascinating. I think
yeah.
it's really fascinating. I'm actually related to John Adams.
Oh my goodness, that's so
My
cool.
my grandmother wanted to be a daughter of the American Revolution, so she did all
Yes,
genealogy all the way back to the Mayflower. So
that's so cool.
I know it is kind of cool.
Yes, very cool.
And I
My
have, go ahead, sorry.
my opening quote in this book is a quote from John Adams.
There you go.
So
See, he might be my great 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 grandfather, and that's just a cool thing to think
that's
about
very
in
cool.
history. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I have been back, like I said, to Boston, but I took students 3 times to
Mm.
Washington, D.C., and we did Colonial Williamsburg, which is,
Yeah.
I want to go back there during the Christmas season. I want to see what they do because I understand
Yeah.
they've changed it, that they don't use anything that's not from that time period, and
Okay.
they're supposed to decorate beautifully, and it's supposed to
Yeah.
be phenomenal. So that's
Oh,
kind
I
of,
bet it is.
I don't have much on my bucket list. That's probably the only thing I really have on
Yeah.
my bucket list, is to be able to go back and see that at Christmas time.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. We went a couple years ago in the spring and it was really fun and my girls had a good time and I was kind of doing final touches on my first book. So I went into the blacksmith shop and watched for a long time and asked some questions so
Hmm.
I could make sure I was accurate in what I
Oh,
was
fun.
describing. But
Yeah,
it's a great place.
yeah, when I took the students back, it was during their the same week as our county fair, so it was
Mm.
always in May. So
Yeah.
back in May, where the cherry blossoms were in bloom, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a
Beautiful.
pretty time. It's
Yeah.
probably a lot different now. I don't think I'd want to walk the streets of Washington, D.C. right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I'm yeah.
it's been a real pleasure, Megan. I hope maybe when you have your other one come out, we can meet again and talk a little bit about more about that and see what
Yeah,
your
that'd be
journey
great.
is toward your book 3 and book 4. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to dig in. I'm going to put this on my list because
Thank
I love it. And
you.
I love that it's on Kindle Unlimited. Tell you this, guys, every time. I'm like a broken record, but a lot of people think, well, if I get it on Kindle Unlimited, I'm cheating the author, and that's
No,
just not the case. In fact, a lot
no.
of authors, I have a very well-known author who is way in the know about all these things. He says he makes too much money on Kindle Unlimited to pull it off Kindle because
Yeah,
he would lose
yeah,
the big market for his book. So
yeah,
it's a great way to be able to read books that when you can't really afford to keep buying them, because who can
definitely.
really? So it's
Yeah, and I always encourage people too, your library is a great place, and if they don't have it, you ask them. They often will
right,
stock a book for you, and then you can enjoy it, and you can tell other people, hey, it's at the
right.
library. But yeah, Kindle Unlimited is a wonderful, wonderful program, and still great for the authors.
Well, I'm glad you brought libraries up because I think libraries are way undervalued and underused. My daughter's a librarian at Tennessee State
Mm,
University, so she's always like pushing the
yeah,
library thing. And she's worked at several public libraries, and she goes, if they need to be funded, and if people don't
yeah,
use them, they were not going to have them out there. So
right,
that's
right,
critical. Thank you for bringing that up, Megan. It's
yeah,
a pleasure meeting you. I will put all of your links in here, and I noticed on your website you have your social medias available. You have a
yeah,
newsletter there, and
yeah.
do you write a blog on your? I didn't see if you have a
I
blog on.
don't do a blog, nope. But my newsletter goes out just once a month, and anybody that signs up, there's a short, like 4 chapter short story, also based on the Boston Tea Party, actually based on a couple of real people that were there. So you can read
Perfect.
that if you sign up.
I think I'm going to go on there and sign up then. Okay.
Wonderful. It was so nice to meet you and talk to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
You too. It's been a real pleasure. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.